Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. I'm so happy to have everyone here. Those of you that have been on here before, you know the drill. We're doing some introductions while everyone has a chance to get logged in, get their audio set up, so that we can make sure everyone can hear us and see us and participate. So I'm really excited to have Philip Rothy and Sheikh Sadiq with me today. They are both from our support team, and they are here to talk a bit about learning about the best way to create images for your architectural designs. So awesome to have you both on. I also have Naman Maisarwala with us, and he is our expert elite here to help us a little bit with questions. I would love to hear where you are coming in from. So if you could open up your question and answer panel and let me know where you're coming in from, and I'll start to announce those, and hopefully it doesn't go too fast so I can get to everyone. I see Sarah from the UK, Adam from Houston, David, I'm not sure where David is from Pennsylvania. Excellent, nice to have you. Linda, now it's starting to go too fast. Let me slow it down for me. Carlos, it's nice to have you from Chicago, and Linda from Georgia, Raiders from Orlando, Andrew from Vancouver, excellent, Howard from Baltimore, Walter from Southern California, Andy from Washington, D.C. I'm not sure if I'm going to say this name right. Gelume from Montreal. I apologize if I murdered your last name or your name. I'm so sorry. Rachel coming in from Scotland. That's exciting. And Barry from Wales. Andrew from Seattle. It's so nice to see everyone come on. I think the numbers are starting to level off a little bit, so I'll go ahead and get started. Just before we start, though, I do want to go through our safe harbor statement. This is just basically saying if we make any kind of forward-looking statements about planned or future developments, please do not make purchasing decisions based on what we say today. I think for the most part, though, Philip and Sheikh will be talking about features that are already in the software that you own, so we shouldn't have to worry about this too much. But like I said, don't make any purchasing decisions if we talk a little bit about any kind of futuristic features. Oh, I've got to remember to change that forum. Don't look at that forum link. I'm going to put a new link in the chat panel so that you have it. But basically, our lines are muted today, except for those that are talking, and so that we can get a nice clean recording, because the link to the recording will be sent out to everyone who registered, and you can share that with your coworkers, your friends, your colleagues, whoever you want to share it with. You can do that. We do encourage questions, though. So really, we are meaning for this to be a way for everyone to learn from everyone. So I do encourage your questions, your comments. You can do that by raising your hand in the audience panel, or you can add your questions to the Q&A panel, just like what you did as you joined, and let me know where you're coming in from. Oops. All right, so just as a reminder, these are all of the different virtual meetups that we have going on right now, depending on what industry you are in. Obviously, architects, you're going to come the fourth Tuesday of every month, but if you happen to go over into some BIM management as well, you might be interested in the first Tuesday of the month. And in fact, next week on Tuesday, we will be talking about BIM 360 with the infrastructure products. So BIM 360 with Civil 3D. In case you are interested, if it is something relevant to you. Now, for those of you that plan to go to AU, if you were hoping to be a speaker, the deadline has now passed. That deadline was June 22nd. However, I have an awesome opportunity for you. There's still a way for you to be able to present at AU if you are interested. And by the way, AU is completely free this year since it's completely digital. But if you are interested, and I apologize, I forgot to change this slide as well, please let me know if you would like to do a 5-minute talk in our meetup that will be live at AU. You can talk about workflows that have saved you time and money at your firm. You can talk about best practices that you have, or tips and tricks. The big thing is it's going to be 5 minutes of talking, presenting, and then 5 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll rotate to a new presenter. So if you are interested, send me an email by the end of this week, so by July 31st, and let me know that you are interested in speaking at AU and give me your topic. Once I have all of the topics gathered, I will share them with everyone at the August meetup so that you can vote on which presentations you would like to see. And we'll pick the top 3 to 4 presentations and try to fit them all in. The highest number of votes will be the first topic, and then we'll go down from there so that we make sure that we hit the ones that you are the most interested in. So with that, I am actually going to go ahead and turn it over to Philip and Sheikh to present today's topics. So Philip, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, that's good. I hope, okay, show my screen. So I hope my internet is going to remain stable. There was a bit of degraded audio coming through, but hopefully this should all work. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. It's a good turnout. It's great to be sort of virtually meeting up with you, and it's a pleasure for both myself and Sheikh to present. So a little bit about ourselves. Hold on, let me move forward in the slide. That's me. Well, not really, but it's my emoji, and I've been at Autodesk for about 5 years now. No, for about sort of 3 years. I moved from a role of a design technology manager, and I've been using Revit since about sort of Revit version 9, since 2007. As you can tell, I saw a few people from the UK. Yes, I am a Brit. I've been living over in the United States for a good number of years now, and San Francisco currently is my home. I am a registered British architect in the UK. I've been so for about sort of 15 years, and whilst I was an architect, I traveled across multiple continents, practicing and going from schematic design all the way through to construction documentation and on-site work. So my big passion is architecture, and I do have, I think, as probably any architect has a passion for rendering, drawing, and so on. So we'll be sort of focusing a little bit on that during this presentation. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Sheikh, who can talk a little about it himself.
Hello. Hope everyone can hear me. Hey guys, my name is Sheikh Sadek. I work in the M&E industry. I've been a part of VFX, like VFX industry, movies, animations, and a couple of games. Some of my works that I was part of was Life of Pi, Peace Dragon, Doctor Strange, as you can see there. I've been a part of Autodesk team, which is on the M&E side. Been a part of 3ds Max's team, Maya, Motion Builder, and Mobu for about 3.5 years now. And I've been in this industry, that is M&E, for about 6.5, 7 years. So yeah, going good. Great to be here.
Great, thanks, Sheikh. I think he's got some really cool things that he's worked on. I'll have to go and check them out and see what exactly he exactly did on those projects. We've already talked about the safe harbor statement. We've already talked about the lines are muted, so we can just skip across. So what we'll be doing is we don't have that much time. This is such a huge topic. We're going to try and rush through. I don't know where people stand with whether they're new to sort of the digital tools that we provide. Some people, I'm sure, are sort of high-end renderers, know 3D Studio Max. We don't really know what you are particularly where you particularly stand. So we're going to sort of like go straight through from a little bit of sort of precedence all the way through to looking at 3D Studio Max, and hopefully can pick up some useful tips along the way. As Michelle mentioned earlier, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll try and answer those. But so basically, what I'm going to be covering in the first half is I'm going to look at sort of how to best communicate your ideas. We're going to look at some of the tool sets that we have, and I'll be sort of jumping into Revit and looking at Revit 2021, the latest version, and how you can achieve some of your renderings through either sort of rendering through the cloud or using the sort of real-time rendering that we have. The second half, we're going to be, I'm going to hand it over to Jake, who's going to look at a sort of a 3D Max overview. He's going to be talking about Arnold and Substance, and hopefully we can sort of give you a few tips and tricks on lighting, materials, and denoising. So, and the final thing is that hopefully we have around to some questions. And as you could tell, I'm from England, so I've put up these first and second half. If we get out to a shootout, that would be sort of pretty good. And hopefully everyone remains happy like we have here. Not very often that we see the English football team always being happy. So I'd like to sort of go into to sort of like talking about what we'll be looking at in further. We're going to be taking a look at a sort of a precedence of the sort of rendering, looking at in particularly sort of like stylistic approaches. Then we're going to go and talk about a little bit about level of detail and sort of the appropriate level of detail that you should be trying to achieve, and how to best communicate your ideas most effectively. And then we're going to be looking at the tool sets itself. So really, I think as far as communicating your idea, I think it's been going on trying, especially for the built environment, is how do you communicate your idea, especially, you come from an education of architecture where you have the crit, you have the sort of the graphics, you have to stand up, you have to communicate your idea and your intent, and you have to do it in a very compelling manner. It's been going on through centuries. I mean, I try to find out when was the first architectural drawing, how, where you communicate your design intent. And there's a statue in Mesopotamia around 2,200 years ago with the statue of Gudea, and on his lap sits a plan. So I think that's the first, the first recorded floor plan that we've found to date. I thought that was kind of interesting. But also, when the Renaissance came around, we have the communication of drawings. With Palladio here, you see his drawings, and how does he represent his style, whatever. But it also comes from a whole gamut. How do you capture your ideas, and all the way through to making sure that your client appreciates or sees the final sort of solutions that you have, and you can go along and have that dialogue about what they want to achieve and how to go and about getting that. And there are all sorts of different ways and methods and pros and cons to doing those. I mean, even here is just from Ben van Berkel, just the napkin sketch. Everyone's familiar with napkin sketches. They're very compelling. They sort of get your idea across. They have the whimsy, but you can also go into sort of more high-end renderings too. And there was a big phase in sort of the 1920s with the futurist movement, where we're having very compelling images. It's about looking towards the future. These impressive, iconic, metropolis-esque Fritz Lang movies. We also had the futurism from Tullio Crowley, where you're getting these buildings, you're having the interplay between technology and architecture. And then so you had that futurist movement, but then also if you look at it today, I mean, we have these very compelling images and these movies, such as Blade Runner, very similar, fast-paced, technology driven, but rather than a utopian future, it's a dystopian future. So, but the sort of the compelling sort of images that you get from those. And then there's more sort of the interest in the movie industry about cities and how to and sort of the megalopolises. What is the future of architecture, the buildings, the environment we all live in. And as an architect myself, I'm very compelled by watching science fiction movies, Star Wars. Here we have the Galactic City in the Clone Wars, of just it's very ephemeral. It's beautiful, and you sort of it captures the imagination. But also, so too is capturing the imagination. It doesn't have to be highly rendered images. I mean, you also can get a compelling image across just in black and white with pencil, very much like the napkin sketch we saw earlier, but we also have it in cartoon. So here we see Frank Miller with his famous Sin City drawings and cartoons, adding to that mood and that sort of environment of the sort of, and then we see that with the built environment in other films where you get this hybridization of sort of the film noir with sort of getting that cartoon aesthetic as well as the sort of film noir, and then having a hybrid approach using sort of the technology tools representing CGI and the movies such as Renaissance in the Miramax movie. So really the question you have to ask yourself is what level of detail should you be providing, and who is your audience going to be? For me, as architects as well, is that you have a fixed budget and you have a fixed time. For me, you can get carried away with the drawing, with the modeling, and go into sort of high levels of detail because you're exploring it, you're getting involved into it. But yet you could be going down a path where you haven't got that approval. So with your client, he may be sort of happy with just having that dialogue with a concept sketch, and rather than necessarily going into a high level of detail where you're actually starting to put color, textures, materials, all of these things in, and then they're not as compelling because you've already given the solution, whereas you haven't had that dialogue with your client to get them there. So it's that storytelling which is so key to being successful with your renderings. And but it's also leveraging, as you got time, it's leveraging the sort of the tools and the digital tool set you have. Here we see sort of a Formit sketch where you can go along and take, just do a basic massing and then embellish it sort of with the details, like with using Sketchbook or some other application. You don't need to model up all the details. You can go and have those details with Sketch, and it helps inform your designs as well. So what tools do we have within our architectural toolbox? Personally, I love sketching. I think I've probably moved away from sketching over the years because I've been using more 3D modeling tools, been going into the BIM environment. Yet, as an architect, for me, the sketch is sort of key. It brings me back to sort of how I started off at university, what my passions were, very much sort of the artistic element. And what I really do like is the clean environment of Sketchbook. You can use it on multiple platforms. There's a desktop version, so you can use it with your Surface. You've got the Surface Pen. You can go along and use it with the pencil on an iPad. You can make it mobile. You can get those sketches. You can add the layers on. You can really embellish upon and ruminate on what your design is going to be. What's really compelling is that it's free. We also have sort of Formit as well. Formit is going through sort of an evolution, but what's very good about it is having that ability to do that quick modeling, get those ideas through, and then port them over into Revit. And I think this year you'll start to see a lot more of that happening. And then we're starting to get into sort of Dynamo integration. We're going to be seeing more generative design as we move forward, but that sort of thing where you can get the iterations happening. It's very easy to learn. And it's on multiple platforms as well as on the web. And then there's the big powerhouse of Revit. I'm sure most architects use Revit to communicate and share your designs with other consultants as well. It's a great tool for documentation. In Revit 2021, we've brought in real-time rendering. I'm going to be looking at, after this, we're going to be sort of doing a bit of a deeper dive into sort of what sort of multiple rendering options that we have. We'll look a little bit about cloud work sharing. What is nice about Revit as well is they have a plethora of add-ins that they're very, very good. There's a lot of third-party developers out there that have made integrations onto their platforms as well. And we can talk about that a little later on the next slide. But also we are starting to see integration with generative design too, which came about in 2021. So, that speed, that iteration, by also allowing sort of the rendering and the getting those compelling images and those iterations out to communicate your design to your clients. And maybe Sheikh, you want to go along and talk a little bit about sort of 3D Studio Max and Arnold.
While we're switching between presenters, there was a question that came up, Philip, in the Q&A. Does Sketchbook and Formit come with Revit subscription?
They do for the architectural subscription. Formit does. Sketchbook is free unless you're working from an enterprise. You want an enterprise license, and that enterprise license is pretty cheap, and then you can. I don't know what the price is at the moment, but that can be deployed across your firm.
Great. And Sheikh, are you able to present yet?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. I mean, you can keep the same presentation. I'll just talk about it quickly. So when it comes to Arnold, Arnold is a plugin inside 3ds Max. That is, when you install 3ds Max, you should be able to have access to Arnold's single machine rendering process. But when it comes to cloud rendering, or when it comes to batch or rendering farms, I think I believe you need to have, or the user needs to have access to credits from Autodesk, or sorry, from SolidAngle. So also, if you don't have access to Arnold right now, what you can do is you can go onto the SolidAngle's website and download the Arnold's plugin, and you can install it. And once you have installed it, you should be able to add it via the plugin manager inside 3ds Max, and you should be able to have access to Arnold's rendering, Arnold's power inside of 3ds Max. So in this scenario, after Philip completes the other slides, we'll probably go inside 3ds Max and Revit and try to figure out what would be the best process to bring out a scene live in 3ds Max.
Great. Okay, thanks, Sheikh.
But,
and so I think for me, there's, as I was mentioning, there's a whole plethora of different sort of plugins that you can use, other apps, and to make those compelling images. And you have to give a shout out to that ecosystem. They do great work. You can't do a really compelling rendering without sort of some of the tools here, like Photoshop. I'm sure everyone's aware of. I've put some of my favorites up there. I have to give a great shout out to Enscape too. That's a GPU renderer. It does real-time rendering. You put it off to, if you've got two monitors, you put it off to the side. It does some great work. Lumion, likewise. We have, I mean, everyone in the industry, the rendering industry knows about sort of V-Ray and what they do. But there's also sort of the sketching tools that I don't think we should forget about as architects and designers, is sort of, Morpholio Trace. If you've got an iPad, do check that one out. I think Paper as well. It's fun to use. It's great with the pencil. And Procreate is very much similar to Sketchbook, but that's probably, it's not free. And then we start to get into sort of VR. So Enscape does a great job with porting over simply to VR with the headsets. But if you really want to dive into sort of that more gaming portion to create these very immersive environments, Unity is a great option. And like Photoshop, we also have Affinity as well, Affinity Design, which is also a great sort of application as well. So I'm going to try and go, enough of the PowerPoint, I think. I'm going to try and go into product. This is where it all goes wrong, as everybody knows. So hopefully we shouldn't get into sort of problems. I'm very cognizant of the time. I want to give Sheikh some work, because I think he's got some great tips and tricks, especially for those high-end renderings. I'm going to talk about very simple sort of renderings within from Revit. So we're going to be looking at sort of just setting up a camera, looking at sort of the graphic display options, where basically that's your interface for adding sort of light, sun, going along and making sure the line styles, these overrides. We're also going to be looking a little bit about materiality and assets. And then they're really about rendering cloud and real-time rendering and so forth. So I'm going to jump into the application. Michelle, do we have any sort of questions that come up before I jump in?
Actually, yes. So there are two. Will Autodesk Sketchbook integrate I'm guessing that's at scale, on the straight edge in the near future?
When they mean straight edge, sorry, I'm a bit confused.
You know, we might need to take that one offline.
Okay, all right,
We'll reach
that's
out
fine.
to Jeremy on that. And then
Sure.
the second one from Remy is thanks. And does 3ds Max and Maya, along with Arnold and Cloud, come with Revit subscription also?
I'm going to put that one up to Shake.
So 3ds Max is a separate application. So if you have access to 3ds Max, you have access to Arnold as well. Whereas Revit, I think Revit has Arnold too. If I'm right, Philip.
I'm not sure about that, but we can
Yeah,
find out.
We'll
yeah, we can
definitely get
probably
back
get
to
that
you.
offline.
Okay,
But
and that's all the questions.
just a quick update on 3ds Max. When you install 3ds Max 2021 or 2020, you should be having access to Arnold itself. So it's just a plugin. You can enable it in the plugin manager if not, and you should be able to do single machine renderings or images or small, not videos, well, small renderings should be fine.
Okay, great. So I'm going to quickly jump into Creative View. I'm using the sort of out-of-the-box Revit simple project. It may be sort of unfortunate because it'd be cool to see some great architecture. It's not bad. So the best I could do, I upgraded this model from 2018. So like many people will have that. There've been some add-ins to or some improvements to assets and material assets that came in around, I think it was the end of Revit 2020. So with that, it gives a much more of a realistic rendering at the end. So there were improvements that were made. So, but we can see how that transpires. But if I was to go along and look at our camera view, hold on, let me just have a look. Problem is the screen's gone smaller, so I'm just going to try and look. So hold on, 3D view. Here we go, camera. So we set up a camera. So we just go along, select the camera from the 3D view, and then we position it where we want. We will go to here. We then bring it out, and you see a view, and then it will take to that. We click again, and it creates a view. And then from that view, we can look back. And let's go back to the plan. You can go raise the camera if you go to an elevation, so you can drag it up and drag it down. You can go along and look at it in plan again, and you can sort of bring it out a little further. So we can bring it to here maybe, and you can move the target of the camera around, and we can look at it, what it looks like in the view. I'd like to capture it a little bit more. You can also go along and let's zoom out a little bit further. You can pull these out too, and then bring them out up and down, right? So now we've got our little view here. What's going on? Pull this down, and then you just got your simple black and white. And down in the bottom corner, right down here, here's your visual styles. So if you click on these visual styles, you have the various different options. So this is the options that we're going to be looking at, but we have wireframe, hidden line, shaded, consistent, and realistic. And realistic in 2021 is now using that sort of real-time rendering. Unfortunately, the little laptop I'm using is not the greatest for showing this, and hopefully we won't sort of overheat. But if I was to look at, I want to go along, start to look at the graphic display options. Within it, you have a whole series of options that come in. So we can start to look at shadows. Always, it's very nice to go along and start to do the ambient shadows. It gives a lot more sort of realism to that particular view. You can apply it, you can then see it. So it now becomes a little solid. We're also going to go along, and then if we look at sort of the lighting too, you can sort of change the sort of the lighting intensities and shadows. So you can make the shadows darker, you can make them lighter, and you can apply those too. So let's move back through, and then you can also, if you want that sort of more of a sketchy book, more sketchy feel to the thing, you can enable sketchy lines. You can change the extensions, which are the lines that come from the the edges to give it more sort of those architectural feels. You can also go along and jitter it to make it more sketchy as well. So you can sort of make it a bit more wobbly as it goes through. So we're getting those sorts of, more of a sketchy kind of feel. I don't want necessarily to do that. Okay, so I'm going to apply those. And now what I want to do is look at it sort of more realistically. But before we do that, let's just look at sort of the silhouettes. I think silhouettes, when you want to punch an image out, silhouettes make it really sort of stand the outline of the building. Gives much more of a compelling sort of image. So you would use wide lines, and then you apply those, and already you start to get those feelings like it's starting to punch out. So I think the image here, I like to go along and make the ambient light a little bit more. So let's apply that. Make the sun a little bit stronger. And then now, so then you're starting to get sort of an image coming across. Just a black and white image, which you can either bring into something like Sketchbook, where you can go and draw, you can go and add colors, you can do it that way. You can also, we've also got other aspects to it where you can go along and do consistent colors too. So we can look at, now you're starting to sort of get the colors in, and the consistent colors come from when you're looking at the materials themselves. So for example, if I select the roof here, and we look at the colors, those consistent colors is, if I go to edit the structure, look at the red roofing, you can go here and you can use sort of the render appearance. You could change that color if you wanted to do it. So that's with that particular setting. Or if you're going into the real-time rendering here, you could change the color. So they're different things. One is more graphics, the other one is on the appearance side. So with that being said, we can also look at the realistic view, and this is probably where my computer is going to sort of struggle a little bit. We will have to wait a bit whilst it's sort of doing those real-time renderings. Once it's sort of set up, you've got a fast GPU. This is much better and better performance as well. So whilst that's having a think, I have also got, should this go wrong, I've got a presentation view which I was creating here, which I'll flip to in a moment. But we've now got the spinning wheel. It takes a bit of time. My computer's overheating at the moment. There we go. So we have this view. And so already you're starting to get sort of that real-time sort of rendering approach. You're getting sort of the lighting, the ambiance coming through. I don't particularly like this metal panel. I don't want it to be red. I want it to be black. Or a sort of a gray color. I can then change that by going to the edit type, going to the structure once again, going to the color, and going here, clicking on those little three dots, which bring up the dialog for the materials. And then from those materials, I can also go along and create a new material by going here. And you'll see there's all these little icons. This means that there's a newer version of the appearance asset that came out, as I mentioned, in 2020, which gives a more realistic rendering. So you can start to swap those out, especially if you're updating your model from a previous version. So I'm going to do that by going into the materials. So I'm going to create a new material. And I'm going to go and rename that material as, let's call it standing seam gray. So I'm going to add that, but that's just adding just a basic, and then we would go to the asset browser. And then within that asset, we've got these physical assets, and these were all new. So these physical assets being a much better rendering quality to it. And from within those, I can go in and search. Let's do standing. Let's see what comes up with standing. Hopefully, there we go. So let's look at roofing. And when it hasn't got those icons, it means it's with those assets. So we go in, and then there's this button that I can just bring it in, bring all that particular material into this gray standing seam that I've created. You click on that button, and then when you see that, you will start to see the metal roofing. And I knew from when I was doing a sort of a rendering that it was actually the roof. So let's just go OK. And so I've got that. Go OK, apply. Okay, let's unclick that. Hopefully that's going to be a gray color. There it is. When I was looking at this, I also noticed, although in this particular view, but when I was doing a sort of a realistic view, I noticed that the standing seam was going the opposite way. It was going a sort of a 90-degree perpendicular. So then when I would go there, I would change that by going back to my edit type. I can go to this, we'll go to the standing seam, click on those three buttons. And then within those assets, you go to the appearance, because this is where the realistic renderings come from, uses these materials, and you can change the orientation. Oop, there we go. You can change the orientation by clicking on the 90-degree and rotating it. But once you've done that, it will rotate it the other way. You'd also have to make sure that sort of the bump map or what other assets are coming in also are changed in those same directions too, because you don't want to have a sort of crisscross pattern that occurs. So once you've got all of those, then you're feeling good. You like what you see. So this is what I did earlier, just in case things went wrong. So this was my view that I created. And when I wanted to do that, then it's like, well, how do I get this into sort of a more of a realistic rendering? And there's two options here, apart from if you use those third-party plugins, which are like the Lumions, they're the Enscapes. You can also go along and go to sort of the view, and you can go to render. So you can render here, and this will do your own rendering using your own resources on your own personal computer, or the sort of the desktop computer that you've got. You can set up various things. You can set up the style for the clouds, and then when you go and render it, that's when it's the bit of what I call the old school way of rendering, where it's going to churn and it's going to spit it out. You get a better quality rendering, or alternatively, we also provide a service which is rendering to the cloud. So you can select this render to the cloud, comes up with this dialog box. You could suppress it afterwards, but basically you select the 3D view, the service, what sort of image you want, and then you just press go. It will go to your cloud, your render gallery, and then you can pick up that information there. And just for the sake of time, because I really want Shake to talk rather than myself, we can go straight to the cloud, and then you could see what sort of things that we do have. So these were some of those images that I created. So this was the one that's this image here. Is an image of the same thing, but this was rendered to the cloud at low resolution. I wasn't doing it final. If you want to go along and sort of improve it or make any changes, you can select this post-processing, and then with that post-processing, you can go along and change the values, and you can add bloom, and you could do change the saturation and shadows, and you can sort of end up with sort of a different type of image, you know, how you want to go along and change those. So you can see that, and this is still at sort of that low quality, and when you can go and get those further higher qualities. You've also got these other ones where you can get a panorama. You can share those panorama views with your clients too, where you can look around and then you can see the building itself, and you can share those with your customer. Or alternatively, you can also go along and look at sort of solar studies, and you can do this. You can just send that one image up, one model up to the cloud, and you can go through the interface here and start to create, you know, what are those illuminants, those shadow studies going to be. So here's the shadow study was produced, and you can say what the frequency is. So this is every hour from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock, depending on your location, of course. And then finally, this one I completely cocked up. This is more of it's called a turntable. I didn't realize you had to be in the middle to be able that turntable to work. So we're actually in the model. It flies into the model. So not a successful one, but nevertheless, it's worthwhile taking a look at. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand it back to Shake. Let's go back to here and then talk about 3ds Max in more detail.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That was awesome. So when it comes to plugin, I guess I kind of spoke a little bit about the how Arnold's plugin works. It's just an install or a download from the Squad Angles website, or if you got 3ds Max, it should be automatically available when you install it. Also, before going ahead, do we have any questions? We good?
Yeah, we do actually have some.
Sure.
So, Jeremy, I might go ahead and unmute your line really quick. Jeremy Putman. So let me see if I can capture you in here. There's so many of you. I'm trying to just scroll through because Jeremy had a couple of questions, and I thought it might be better just to have him ask live. Jeremy, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Jeremy, go ahead and ask your question live.
Certainly. Thank you guys for this presentation. It's really helpful. My question involves Sketchbook, which was mentioned earlier, and I really have found it a great tool to do just some freehand sketching and draw. And there's a lot of great examples of artistic drawings that are done. My question is, in comparing kind of like to Morpholio Trace, you're able to set a scale for an image, because one of the things I do is I'll sketch out details or elevations of a building, and in Morpholio Trace you're allowed to, you can set a scale to that sketch, and the ruler will adjust in scale, so I can draw to scale. Is Sketchbook thinking of adding a similar feature to their ruler?
I will go and find out for you, Jeremy. It would be wonderful. Yeah, I use that feature too on Trace, and it's really compelling and especially very useful when you're sort of like drawing out the lines. Let me find out for you and see what sort of development we have, and we'll get back to you.
Great, thank you.
All right. Does that cover all your questions? I know you had a few in the Q&A panel.
That does, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Jeremy. All
Awesome.
right.
And actually,
So,
before we jump really into Shake, I think what we might do is just quickly, I want to go and quickly just jump into the slide to go on to the final one, which is, can I do that, or are you controlling it?
I think
Oh,
you
no,
have
no.
control.
Do I have control? Oh,
That
no,
was
Shake.
my side.
It doesn't matter. No, you've got control. Sorry about that, Shake. You carry on. It's I'll mention the resources at the end because I think they're very useful for the audience to see.
Understood. Can you go back 2 slides, please?
Oh, sorry. I'm controlling it, am I? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we are.
So
Sorry,
thank
I thought it was you.
So yeah, let's get into Arnold and 3ds Max, and let's see how we can bring Revit files inside 3ds Max and how you can modify or how you can play with it to get sort of the output that you're looking for. So starting with the plugin itself, Arnold is a plugin, as I mentioned before. It is available via the Solid Angles website. If you guys want to download it separately, Arnold is available for other applications as well, like Rhino, Maya, Houdini, and all sorts of other applications out there. So it's just a plugin. So if you don't see inside 3ds Max even after you install it, don't panic. You can just go into Customize, go into Plugin Manager, and you should be able to install the plugin. So just make sure that you have the plugin placed into the 3ds Max STD plugins folder on your computer. So that's it. So what we're going to see is, since I think we are at a limited time right now, I'll try to be a little bit concise since this is more of a Revit to 3ds Max process. We'll be talking about how you can export from Revit and how you can bring it into 3ds Max. There are kind of 2 ways that you can do, and also we'll be just setting up a basic exterior lighting with Arnold Sky Dome, just a couple of simple processes that you can get it and don't have to sweat a lot. It shouldn't be more than 5 minutes to set it all up. So let's go in. Can you go into the next slide, please? Philip? Awesome. So this is basically how you can import the files from Revit to 3ds Max. And after you have imported it, just make sure, this is just a tip, just make sure you go into your scene converter and you should be able to convert the scene, which is from Revit, to an Arnold setup. So that should be useful. I'll show live how to do that. It's just a simple step. And on the next slide, you'll probably see how the model, like the data set inside Revit, how it looks in 3ds Max in the viewport, and after you rendered it, just a basic render with no light setup as well. Can you quickly go to the next slide? Awesome. So on the top left, that's how it should look in your viewport, or it could look in your viewport depending on what you've set it. You can set it as a high-end, like an active shade inside your viewport itself. That would take a lot of a machine resource. But if you don't want to do that, you can just set it on the regular standard default shading or high quality shading. I would not go to high quality still. I would just be in standard shading. So that is a standard shader out there. On the left, and on the top, on the bottom right corner, that is how it could look inside Arnold after you have imported it. You haven't done anything, no lights, no post-processing at all. It's just a simple render. Press F9 and you should be able to get that look quite quickly. So from here on, can I present myself or can I present my screen?
I think so. How do I do that?
I just made you presenter, Sheikh, so that you should be able to share your screen. Let me know if you have any trouble.
Sounds good. Yep, I think I should be able to show my screen.
Perfect, we're seeing it.
Can you tell me, are you seeing my Revit or 3ds Max? You should be seeing my Revit window.
Yes, we're seeing Revit.
Awesome.
Yep.
So this is just a basic set, like a data set. You can, should be anyone who has Revit 2021, I think 2022, if I'm not wrong, 2020 and 2021 as well. This should be on the sample list on the top as soon as you open the file itself. So in order to properly export, just make sure that you're not in just in any of the other views. Make sure that you're in 3D so that you should be able to do this. I'm not much of a Revit expert. I know how Revit works. So this is all I know how to export from Revit to 3ds Max. Philip, you can back me up if I'm doing anything wrong, because I'm pretty sure that user needs to be on the 3D view
Yes.
to be able to export. So awesome, thank you. So once you're in 3D view, just make sure you go into File and do an export. You can do an FBX export. I've already done it since I'm on a smaller machine on a laptop at this time. I would not go ahead and do that. It does take a little bit of time for me. So I've already exported it. So yeah, just go into File, Export, and do an FBX export. And once you are done with that, you should be able to go into 3ds Max and you should be able to import the FBX file into 3ds Max. Even to do that, there are a couple ways to import the Revit file into 3ds Max itself. One would be just directly importing it, like going to File, Import, and you should be able to just import the file, import the FBX file. There is another way, which is just going to File, Import, and you can link that particular FBX and you can actually work on it. That means, let's say, for example, you're working on a 3ds Max with that particular file and you have linked it to the FBX file, which is somewhere on your machine. And let's say if you want to make any changes inside Revit, and you could actually export that on the same name with that same naming convention, and it will automatically update that FBX file if it's linked properly inside 3ds Max as well. So let's say if you do any changes inside Revit, that FBX, when you import it via this way, it should automatically reflect the changes that you have made in Revit and exported it. So that's another way. So for this case, since I don't have it enabled, I will go ahead and just directly import, open. And these are pretty much standard. I wouldn't go and change any of these. In case if you have any animations, I wouldn't go ahead with this one, because if you're going to 3ds Max, I would recommend you doing animations inside 3ds Max, like camera animation and all that. Lights, they are okay, unless you don't want the lights. I'll show you why. And cameras, pretty much standard. If you want, you can get the cameras. You can convert those cameras lights in using the scene converter to a much friendlier objects inside 3ds Max that is much friendlier to Arnold rendering. So before I do that, do any of you have any questions?
We do have some questions. I'm going to open up Fred's line. He's been patiently waiting with his hand raised. Oops, I've just lost Fred. Hold on. It disappeared. Let's try this again. Fred Hallman, are you able to speak to us? I think you're self-muted. Do you still have a question? Oh, that might be why I lost him. He probably unraised his hand. Okay, let's go to, I apologize if I say the name wrong, Vandana Verde. I'm going to open up your line. Are you able to unmute yourself? Vandana?
Michelle, while they're doing, just 8 minutes left, okay? Thanks.
Yes, thank you for keeping the time for us. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like she might not have a question after all, so I'm going to remute her. Let's go to Dan O'Neill's question. He says, hi there, I am just starting an MArch program. I participated in the Formit webinar and now the Revit webinar, and these are great exposure to software. Can you give me a brief differentiation between AutoCAD, Formit, and Revit in the conceptual design and sales phase of architecture, and when each might be used?
I think that's a super good question. I think it's kind of fundamental. Okay, going to try and do it quickly. So AutoCAD is really where I would do. It's much more of a 2D environment. If you were doing a sort of a layout, sort of landscaping, or sort of getting this sort of, you want a workflow into Illustrator, that was where I'd sort of use AutoCAD. It also does a great job sort of documenting and sort of doing text overlays and things like that to actually make your PDFs and you know, your images that way. It's a great tool, easy to use too. But speaking of easy to use, Formit is a great tool, very simple interface, and you can create compelling images. You can also start to dabble into Dynamo to get you know, computational design, get some repetitive elements going in. You can get some very compelling images out of it too. And then Revit is really, it's a powerhouse. It's definitely something where you do your documentation in. It's the big benefit with it is the work sharing, so you can collaborate with lots of other people. You can do a little bit with that in Formit on the web. So yeah, it's and then you've got the ability to take sort of Formit geometry and things like that into Revit, and you can also go and use the Revit, you know, cloud rendering, as well as starting to get your design intent into more sort of construction drawings. Hope that answers your question.
Excellent. I think that did wonderful. Okay, so the next question, let's see, I'm just looking for some that we haven't been answering in the background. Oh, interesting. Someone is saying the music is distracting and I don't hear any music, so I'll have to look into that. Patricia is saying, in terms of time, real-time rendering software like Enscape and Lumion are very fairly quick and get graphics to clients. How does this process compare in your experience?
If I could take this, I believe Enscape and Lumion are more VR geared. This is more of a non-VR geared. So Philip, if I'm not wrong, Enscape and Lumion are on that area, right?
Yeah, no, they also come out with renderings too. I mean, I think the benefit with Enscape is that it does do a great way to get to VR very quickly. I think when we look at real-time rendering within Revit now, you have that ability to have it. It's very GPU resource heavy. I think one thing though, what I've noticed with a lot of our customers is now that they're working from home and they're like myself, working from a laptop and not having those GPU accelerators and whatever, it's becoming very difficult for them to get that. So I think it's good to have all sorts of different means and methods. I think sort of cloud rendering is a great way to get those images too. You know, you seeing that real-time rendering, super helpful. I think Enscape is a great tool as well. It's all up to you. That's what I will say, how you want to go and render. And it's fun.
Yep. Also, when it comes to 3ds Max, I believe you just have a little more control on how you manage your scene. If you want, you can create new scenes as well. So that's the only difference I see. Are we good on that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say about 3D Studio Max, it's a great. I mean, the movie and the CGI industry use it. You can start to do animations. Got great plugins for it as well.
Awesome.
It gives you much more finished rendering quality, and you can control that finesse. And I mean, like if you're looking for that magazine-looking images, that 3D Studio Max is what can do it. This is Numan. Sorry, just interjecting on that idea too as well.
Yeah, that's great, Naaman.
All right.
Excellent. Okay, I think that covers all of the questions. Oh, actually, there's one left. So Junior is saying, yes, the presenter mentioned that the panoramic image was shareable. My question is, does the person receiving the image need to download a specific viewer? It's a great question.
No, they don't. It's just straight from the OpenGL or the rendering. They would just see those renderings by going to that website.
Excellent, excellent.
And it's great to do it on a phone, so you can kind of view it interestingly, move the phone around and stuff. So it works great on a phone.
Great. And Kelsey has a question. Would you say Formit is comparable to Sketchup? Would you say Formit integrates better with Revit?
Another good question. Sketchup has been around for a long time. Formit hasn't. Sketchup is a good tool. If you're a Sketchup user, you are going to be probably disappointed with Formit in a way because you're expecting the same way of working. Formit is moving towards very much more of a generative design, Dynamo-based platform. That's where the development is going. It is also it's also looking at this year. We'll start to see great integration with Revit, whereas there tends to be rather what people call a dead workflow. With sort of importing other, like SKP files or SAT files.
Great. Okay. I'm going to go back over to the participants panel then. And Vandana, I see your hand is raised again. I'm going to try unmuting you again and see if you can unmute yourself to ask your question. It is still showing self-muted. Okay, not happening. Okay, so let's go to Vendra's question. So Vendra, your line is unmuted on my side. Are you able to unmute yourself? No? Okay, crickets. Okay, that's all the questions that we have now. And so I want to thank everyone for joining today, especially all of the people who have helped make this happen. As I said, Maisarwala was in the Nauman Maisarwala is in the background, helping answer some of those questions. I didn't quite realize it until he slacked me, but I also have Rajarshi Ray in the background helping with some questions as well. So thank you both for joining to be that background help. And thank you, Philip and Sheikh, for your wonderful presentations. I couldn't have done this without you, so thank you so much.
Yeah, Michelle, I just want to share one last thing with the audience because we did put together some really useful links to look at. There's a great AU presentation by Stephen Shell. I don't know if we can sort of go to that links Shake back to the point, or should am I doing? Maybe I need to control the screen.
That should be, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me make Philip the presenter then.
Sorry about that. I still had a lot to cover. I wanted to go into
I know.
a lot of stuff. Yeah,
it's such a big topic.
Yeah.
So,
I did not even get to read properly, but all good.
Okay, so we've got the questions there. So I think some of the useful links for me to go along is I still think drawing is a compelling way. We had some questions about sort of more folio trace, Sketchbook. There's a great book out there by Scott Robertson. Check it out. It's How to Draw. He talks about that sort of hybridization between the digital to the sketch. do check that out. Another one, Stephen Shell did a great 2019 AU presentation. He's very awesome at communicating. It's been recorded. He gives you great tips and tricks for Revit. I mean, I even picked up some good things. And then there's an article here that's to go to the Autodesk Knowledge Network.